This week on Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
If the land speeder gets blown up turn 1, we should do a giveaway.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast, where we talk about Star Wars Legion, where we hit some tactics and improving your game and other competitive Star Wars news. I'm Kyle, aka Orchimedes, and we also got Endless, aka David, other way around, from Yavin Base, and my friend Mike, aka Dashes, also from Never Tell Me the Odds. How are you guys doing?
Aloha. Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You sound sleepy there, Mr. Kyle. Are you all right? You feeling okay?
Yeah, I got so I have 2 kids, and the oldest one is 2.5. So I am always sleepy.
There you go. I was saying it was too many games with Pathfinders.
Oh yeah, that too. I actually, so we'll get to it, but I usually I'm lucky to play like 1 game of Legion in a given week. I got 4 games in this week, so
nice.
Figures the 1 week I'm actually out of town, he's like, I'm gonna play all the Legion.
It would have been 5. Almost was 5. But yes. So that was awesome. We got a lot of housekeeping to hit related to announcements and Adepticon, stuff like that. So we'll do that first. We're also going to talk about the rules updates that hit actually a couple weeks ago now. Those have been talked about already, so we're just going to hit some highlights and how they affect things currently. We're going to talk about some recent games played with Pathfinders, and then we're going to talk about some battle cards. So let's jump right in, shall we? All right, so if you listen to 5th Trooper, our sister podcast, brother podcast, anyway, related podcast,
fellow podcast. I don't
know. We have a storefront now, so there are lots of things to buy. Buy lots of things. I mean, there's like 8 things right now.
Yeah, there's quite a few. There's like some dice trays. There's some apparel. The biggest thing, I think, is the mats, right? It's got to be the mats.
Oh yeah, the mats are awesome.
There's these really sweet. They've got like spaces on them where you can put your cards down to organize your stuff. And I know that if anyone has ever been across from me at a Legion table, I have terrible issues with organization. And so if you're like me and you need a little help, this mat may be for you. Not to mention the artwork is beautiful. Like, let's just say that for a moment. Really, really nice mud mat. We got a nice crate mat as well. So we've got
Salt
some
Crystal Planet.
Crystal Planet.
Yeah, Salt Crystal Planet. Excuse me. Sorry, Salt Crystal. Whoops.
There is no. Yeah. All right. Salt Crystal mud map. There is also coming soon some other stuff, including possibly a beach style mat. So if anybody wants to storm the beach, you can do that.
For your island getaway / raid on some facility somewhere.
On a beach.
On a beach.
Yep. It's like Normandy, but in Hawaii. Okay. So, yeah, check it out if you want to support the show and get some cool stuff. We have both, in addition to the mats and the dice trays, there's also, as Mike mentioned, some apparel, so you can get shirts for, let's say, either Notorious Scoundrels or 5th Trooper. The dice trays are pretty sweet. It's got our logo on them, too. I'm definitely going to get one of those. And I've already ordered a Salt Crystal mat, because my guys are painted with Salt Crystal bases, so I was super stoked about that. All right. So that's announcement number 1. We are also live streaming Adepticon. So that's both the Last Chance Qualifier and High Command. It's going to be us commentating, along with Jay from 5th Trooper. And we're going to do it, we're going to try and do it ESPN style. So we're going to have, cameras and a backdrop and everything. And live reads. If you want us to do a live read for your business, contact Jay at, what's your email, Jay? Jay's typing. You can cut this 5 seconds of typing out. We need like
Let me out. Let me out of here.
All right, and cut back in. The Fifth Trooper Podcast at gmail.com. And I won't spell it out for you because that's pretty phonetic. Leaving that all in, says Jay. Jay, if you're gonna leave this in, we need like the Cantina song or some kind of looking stuff up music. All right, Roger. So in the future, when we have awkward silence, we'll just play the Cantina song.
There you go. I like this plan.
All right.
You don't need to hear me singing Jeopardy poorly.
Yes. So if you would like to sponsor the live stream, contact Jay at the Fifth Trooper Podcast at gmail.com. All right. You want to talk about Legion by the Bay there, David?
Yes. So I am living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're going to have a convention in May called Kubla Khan. Some of you are familiar with it, I'm sure, but it's the major tabletop convention out here in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so we're going to have a Legion tournament at this event. It's going to be a 32-player tournament. So please come out and play and compete. Join our Star Wars Legion family. I'm part of organizing and playing in it, as well as a number of other people. Nima, who some of you may have met at LVO, is going to be heavily involved in it as well. So it's going to be on Saturday, May 25th, which is Memorial Day, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., 3-round tournament. And there's going to be a second day as well. Our top 8 will go on to day 2 on the Sunday on the 26th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. as well. 2-hour rounds, 3 rounds per day, 800-point standard. And the total cost for the 4-day convention badge, the tournament access, and all associated fees, $65, which is actually very competitive. You get access to the full convention. You get your tournament entry fee all paid for, just $65 out the door. And you can sign up by going to the Kubla Khan website and clicking on the tournaments filter. You could also just search for Legion by the Bay on Google. So we're going to have about $800 in prizes. There's door prizes. We have raffle entry. We have Legion by the Bay deployment zone markers for those folks who may have missed a maximum firepower and want to get a really sweet looking acrylic deployment zone marker. You can pick those up. And we're going to have some sponsorship from this podcast, Fifth Trooper, Sword and Board of Ukiah, and Every Little War, who also makes really cool terrain. Every Little War makes some awesome MDF terrain, and Nima actually designed some terrain for their ranges. And so, come out to our event and come see what it's all about. And we'd love to see you out there. There's also some opportunities for free parking for carpools who are coming in from other parts of the Bay. And I think Daryl also offered a tour of where Return of the Jedi was shot in Marin, California. You're actually going to be right in George Lucas' backyard, because Skywalker Ranch is about 50 miles north of the convention site. So
I thought it was on.
Come on out. So, okay. I'm sorry. Did I ruin that for you?
You did. You did.
Sorry. Oh, damn. Okay. Well, anyway, if you know how movies are made, come see that. And it should be pretty amazing. So that's my little plug for Legion by the Bay. So look us up on Facebook, and we hope to see you there.
Awesome. I'm stoked. I will not be able to go, unfortunately, but
yes, but we're gonna have. I think Nick Freeman's gonna come up too if you want to meet Nick again. And there's some folks from Arizona who are planning on coming out. So we're getting them in here. It's gonna be a cool event.
All right, so next housekeeping item is the Invader League Season 3 terrain contest. So they're doing a terrain contest. This is on Tabletop Simulator to see. It's a map making contest to see who can make some awesome maps, and then they're going to use those maps in Invader League Season 3. So there are prizes. First place is a $50 Dan Wolf Games gift card. Custom area terrain co-designed with Sean Morris of the Terrain Studio. And your map will be used for Invader League Season 3. Second through fourth place are also gift cards to Imperial Terrain, Corvus Games, and Dan Wolf Games. So there's also a separate category for most creative, and that's a $25 Dan Wolf Games gift card and a $25 Imperial Terrain gift card.
And can I just say, if you are interested in this, joining the Legion Discord, there are plenty of resources available. And Tyrion, the guy that made the the Legion mod for Tabletop Simulator is the guy that is going to be your man to help you out learning how to make maps. It might seem daunting to make terrain, but it's actually really simple. And Tabletop Simulator has a suite of really good tools available for you to use in the creation of maps, and it's all very, very simple. So please feel free to join the Legion Discord and participate. It's really not that daunting. So
yeah, it's pretty fun actually. I've played around with it a little bit myself. You know, the nice thing about at least making a map on TTS is that the world is kind of your playground. Like you're not limited by the stuff that you have physically. So, you know, there's lots of things on there that represent STL files and terrain that you may be familiar with also that's 3D printed from the real world. So check it out.
Really quickly, if you are making a map, make sure, especially for competitive, they're going to be pretty strict about the 25% terrain rule. So they really want you to make sure it's 25% if you're submitting a map for competitive.
Yep, and that is going to be like, other than look, you know, that's going to be the primary judging criteria, is that it's mechanically a good map to play on. So just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Last housekeeping item, tomorrow, actually today when this is released, so that would be Tuesday the 5th of March, there's going to be an FFG Legion stream with unreleased units, question mark. Not question mark, there will be units that are not released, and those units will also be utilizing upgrades and things that have not been fully previewed yet. So
yeah, the preview article specified that at a bare minimum we're going to see the new heavies. So
yep, and Luke actually came on the Discord today and asked people what unreleased things do you want to see us use in the game. So whether we get a preview article tomorrow or not, watch that stream and do some zoom enhancing, because there's going to be some stuff in there that we haven't seen yet. So
also of interest, Alex and Luke are going to be playing each other.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry, forgot to. So that's for me, that's actually the primary draw. I want to see them play each other. That's going to be pretty exciting. The duel.
Yeah, I want to see the developers play.
It is on a 3x3, so it's not going to be like a full, 3-hour long 800-point shebang. I don't know what, like, if they're doing a specific scenario or anything either, but it should be awesome. It's at 1:00 Central Time, so it's possible that you're listening to this at the same time, in which case turn this off and go watch that and then come back to this podcast. You guys got anything more housekeeping related, not related to Adepticon?
Nope. I think I've said my piece.
I think we're good.
All right, so we got some Adepticon reminders. Reminder number 1, there's 2 really important reminders in here. So the first one is paint your guys. Adepticon has a 3-color minimum, so you got less than a month now. I know I'm going to be nose to the grindstone myself, just because I've been slacking on my painting. So yeah, make sure you're getting that 3-color minimum in. Also, if you're in the last chance qualifier, your lists are due by the 19th, so you have to submit your list in advance on TTO by the 19th. So that is completely different than every other maximum firepower qualifier so far. So make sure you get those lists in advance so you don't get in trouble.
Yeah, so look up the event on tabletop.to and submit your list there.
Yeah,
by the 19th.
Hopefully you're already signed up on there. If you're not and you're going to the LCQ, get on there and sign up. The link has been plugged on the Facebook page and also on the Discord, so go to either of those places and find it. That is just for the last chance qualifier, not for High Command. High Command is going to be list due morning of, like normal, mostly because there's 32 spots for High Command and only 21 of them are filled. So obviously we can't get those 11 lists because we don't know who those people are yet. So that's the other thing, by the way, is we know exactly now how many spots will be available at last chance qualifier, and that number is 11. So if you're playing a last chance qualifier, you got a pretty good shot.
How many 3-in-1s do you think gold 5?
That's a good question. I mean, so with 64 players, there will be, I think, roughly 12 3-in-1s. So, and 4 4-0s. So all the 4-0s are going to make it, and then about half of the 3-in-1s, roughly. So
About
I mean,
7 or so.
Yeah, so think like, top cut from LVO was 12 players. Basically, it's going to be like everyone that makes the top cut gets an invite, essentially, without having
Yeah,
played
so
for
you got a
12.
very strong chance of making it in if you go 3-1 and like lose your last game or second to last game.
Yep. Also, just getting back to the list thing real quick, even though you do need to submit a copy of your list electronically by the 19th, the standard bring a physical copy, in fact, bring 3 physical copies, caveat also applies on the 19th, because the judges will be essentially just making sure that that list is the same as the one that you submitted early, and stamping it so that you can give it to your opponents. So
bring 5 just in case you lose one.
Yeah, there were definitely most of the delays for signups, not for signups, for check-in for LVO were people that didn't bring their list, or they didn't bring the right format or whatever.
Oh man.
So yeah.
Seems crazy to go all the way to Vegas and then forget that.
Yeah, so please don't forget that you still have to bring a physical copy of your list, and one of those copies has to have your command cards on it as well as your battle cards that you're selecting for your deck. So yep, that's all I got for housekeeping. You guys want to hit rules updates?
Yeah, let's do it.
When do you guys want to tackle that one?
Sure. So we got some rules updates. I think the rules reference is now 1.3.0. I think that's the most current version. So we're just gonna hit some broad strokes. So the overhang rules have changed. That's one of the largest changes. Overhang is now all right. I think the rule is now essentially as long as the model can balance, it's okay. And so that's a huge bonus for repulsor vehicles, because I know there were some issues with repulsor vehicles not being able to fit someplace without overhanging, and of course the all ground vehicles like ATRTs with climbing. That's also big, because now you can like have a tiny bit of the base hanging off the cliff, and if the majority of the base is still on, it's going to count. And I know this is a good change, because I have stuff at my store where my ATRT can totally stand on top of this, except there's like 2 centimeters of base hanging off on either side, and so before it couldn't do that, and I always thought that was kind of silly, so I'm glad that rules change made it in.
This eliminates a lot of gray areas too, like how does the 45-degree rule interact with the overhang rule? The answer is basically as long as the model's stable and it's less than 45 degrees, you're okay. So it's a lot more flexible.
So feel free to balance those ATSTs on top of weird terrain, because that's legal now.
Yeah. Well, don't go too crazy.
I have a question how you'd roll this Archimedes. I saw a friend of mine with their ATST. They were able to balance it because the cabin, the big part on top, the head of the thing, was actually leaning against a taller piece of terrain. And so it was balancing because the actual model was leaning on a high piece of terrain, and I thought that was kind of funny. And like, I don't think that should be legal, but that's just another question.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
It balances. You know what I'm saying?
I'd have to see it probably.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
There was actually another really funny similar instance that I heard of where they were playing with one of those U-wings. And I don't know if it was, like the standard hard plastic one. It sounds like it was like a soft plastic U-wing, because, Vader like moved up to the side of it, and there was an enemy unit balancing on the wing, and he force pushed the unit out to the edge of the wing, and it essentially bent the wing down like towards the table.
Whoa.
Such that before, the wing was not below Vader's head, but after he force pushed the model onto the tip of it, it bent down and it was now below Vader's head, so he could go up there without having to clamber.
That's wow.
So I
can't even.
That seems questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, terrain shouldn't be malleable is the I think that's the short answer to that.
Yeah, big lesson.
I mean, that one seems like like way more gray than the ATST example.
Yeah,
the ATST one, I think the answer is yes, it does balance.
Yeah, I think technically, raw, like it's stable, right?
Yep.
So
doesn't matter what you had to lean on to balance. It's balancing.
Yeah, like
the bendy wing thing, I'm not so sure about that one. All right, we got some compulsory move changes too, right?
Yes, I actually don't know all of the changes to compulsory moves, except that now you can choose to. It's like it's back to the old way that it was, where you can bump back along the template now, as opposed to having to crash when you couldn't land at the end of your compulsory move.
Yeah, so basically during your compulsory move, you can adjust your move backwards along the template as long as it's, if you're going to hit something, as long as it is less than half the width of the base.
I hate this change.
Why is that?
I just tell us more.
Like it's a compulsory move. The idea is that the vehicle is moving at a certain rate of speed. You shouldn't get to change that. I detest it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's an abstraction, right? Like you have things like speeder bikes and T47s that are flying literally above the battlefield, and potentially they're in a position where they're taking damage because of things like barricades.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like I understand what they're doing. I just like mechanically, yeah. I think it should have remained the way it was, but I understand why they changed it. It's good. It is a good change for like feel good rules. I don't know. I liked it the way it was before. It was more interesting to me before.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely had more possibility of things crashing.
Yeah, and I like that. T47 be damned. Whatever.
Well, it was the T47 this rule affected the most, right? Because the base was the largest out of all the repulsors.
Totally.
Yeah, speeder bikes don't usually have as much trouble weaving through terrain as the T47 does.
Yeah, we'd end up with weird rule situations where it's like there's a barricade and my T47, can't balance on it, therefore it crashed into this barricade that's like a good 40 feet below where it's actually flying.
Right.
It's a little funny, but that's just the nature of the beast, right? Ultimately, these are aerial vehicles supported by a terrestrial base, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just like, for instance, like X-wing also played in a 2D plane, right? Essentially, and like, it's not like the asteroids are, like it's kind of got the same premise going on, right? Like, yes, the barricade is clearly only on the ground, but the asteroid is clearly only one place in space. But like, if you drive over it, there's a penalty. I don't know.
Yep, I think it's just an abstraction and a usability change.
Yeah, how do you represent three-dimensional space where there's no up or down on a 2D plane?
And also, like, sort of the nature of what Legion calls compulsory moves, but really is more like planning ahead and moving is much more a significant part of X-Wing and strategy and tactics in X-Wing than it is in Legion.
That's
at least
fair.
as it relates to repulsor vehicles.
I wish people thought about it more, I guess is all I'm saying. And I think that this just makes it so that you can kind of think about it less.
And I still don't think you're taking the speeder.
This doesn't make speeders good.
Yeah, they got bigger problems than not being able to fit places.
Yeah, totally.
They got this problem called being 175 points that dies to a stuffed breeze.
Yep.
I don't even think that we can go down the rabbit hole, but I think it just needs more offense than defense, frankly.
Yeah, it's not even a glass cannon because it's not a cannon; it's just glass.
Yeah, it's a glass Fisher Price hammer is what it is.
But we could talk about the speeder for like an entire episode. So, and in fact, we have somewhat previously.
We actually did somewhere. Yeah. Okay. So the next bullet point here, there's a change to the language of limited visibility, a long-awaited change for the better.
This is awesome. The fact that essentially it's just limiting the range of your units can shoot. I'm gonna be honest, the first like 15 games of Legion I played had limited vis in, I was doing this completely wrong.
which is now completely right.
Yeah, which is great. It's just like,
yeah,
it was a real feel bad the first time somebody was like, hey, your guys actually can't shoot. And I was like, well, what the hell do you mean? They're like, well, the line of sight is blocked on like half your guys. And like, it was just like as simple as cohering them up, to where my unit leader was. But
yeah, it was this is definitely a very sensible change, because I think everybody at least initially just kind of assumed that it was supposed to be the way that it now is currently after it's been errated, which is just, first turn your attacks are limited to range 2, second turn they're limited to range 3. Yeah, the previous like technical wording created all sorts of weird scenarios, since line of sight is mini to mini, but range is almost always unit leader to target for attacks.
It creates some weird things where you can like terrain scope models that are where the whole unit is like out in the open, and
right,
like it's just like
right, and like, do I have cover because half the units in quote unquote the fog?
Right, I mean, I don't.
Yeah, there were so many bizarre situations. This is a huge quality of life change, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just makes things really easy to understand and straightforward.
Yep.
And that's a super positive thing.
I think this is just like, now that, I mean, I've been playing it the right way, which is now the wrong way, for a while now. I think this is just really good for people that are coming into the game and learning.
Agreed. Yep.
It's not immediately evident by reading the original limited Viz card that this wasn't how it was supposed to work.
Yeah, anytime like when you're playing with someone new and you have to spend 5 minutes explaining something to them, that's not a good rule, or it's not a good interaction. All right.
So, last but not least, friendly miniatures from different units can be in base contact with one another. Interesting. So now you can be in melee with yourself? No, just kidding. Of course not. But that's the rules change, and so that actually is very positive for using vehicles as mobile cover. That's the biggest and best aspect of this change, I feel, is that now you can now you don't have to give your opponents cover because your ATRT is in front of you,
or your big treaded tank.
Yeah, so treaded vehicles are heavy cover. I'm really curious / nervous to see how this. I mean, obviously the tank's not out yet, but when you have a ginormous vehicle that you can move around in front of your guys and give them heavy cover while denying heavy cover to your enemy, that seems pretty good.
I mean,
riddle me this, okay? Riddle me this. All right, so if I got like if I got the cubes on the back or whatever, those kyber crystal transporter things, if they're in the bed of the, let's call it the bed of the truck for lack of a better word, does that mean that my stormtroopers can't see over those? Is that a thing that happens?
I mean, I haven't used the models, so I don't know the answer to that
question.
I
haven't exactly.
I would.
Let's just hypothetically, if it's tall enough to actually block the line of sight,
then it blocks the line of sight. Actually? In my opinion,
okay.
like in the same way that like Sabine's arm poses, like regardless of which arm pose you use, if you can see her arm, you can shoot her, right? So
right.
So like if you have added things that are legal to add on to the tank model, they definitely provide cover and block line of sight.
Well, okay, so that's not actually true.
Really?
Yeah, there's a specific provision basically that says vehicles cannot fully obscure other minis. And I'm trying
That's interesting.
But so they're effectively like area terrain, except they're like invisible. So if you're looking through them, it's still the type of cover that they provide.
So time out. So this is I'm learning right now, because this is a rule that really hasn't come up with ATSTs and ATRTs, because clearly you can see through the legs. But it seems to me that if your unit was completely like you can't see them behind the vehicle, you couldn't shoot at them. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the citation, because I was reading this the other day, and it essentially specifically says that.
So that's interesting. So while you do that, like, I mean, I can continue to further speculate here. So if I'm shooting through this thing, and it doesn't block line of sight. That's kind of interesting, right? So that means I would have to like, to determine what line of sight my miniatures actually have, would I then need to mark the tank's location on the board and then pick it up to then determine what line of sight my miniatures actually have if the tank isn't blocking anything? That seems a little bit funny to me.
I'm gonna reserve judgment on this until we have the actual rule
Same
in front of us. Cause
Same. I don't want to. I'm gonna stoke some fires here by talking like that.
Yeah, well, let me find the citation for next time, and then we'll talk about it again.
Yeah. So
I can't find it at the moment. So
jury's out. So don't go grabbing your pitchforks just yet.
Watch Kyle have just made this up to produce conversation or something.
No, I think
fake news.
Nope, never mind. I totally did make it up.
Cool.
Last bullet under vehicles. Vehicles can block line of sight. So boom.
Hey.
All right.
Called it.
Okay. Phew.
Man, I have no idea where I read that. All right.
So going back to my original point, if you were to add the crates to the tank, in my opinion, they would totally block line of sight. If they block line of sight, like they block line of sight, they're part of the tank.
Yep.
You're saying is don't put a giant Palpatine dome on top because
well, I think
or do
it'll be interesting to see, like, I mean, there's modeling for an advantage, right? And then there's like modeling for advantage within the rules. In this circumstance, like, it might be wrong to put the blocks on there. It might be right to put them on there. I don't know. Clearly it goes both ways, but I don't know how much line of sight blocking that those crates actually do.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Until we get the physical model, we won't know.
Yep.
All right, so we should move on now to the Pathfinder games that we've played.
Yeah. Do you,
yeah.
Mike is cackling.
Mike is cackling because of what's in the show notes.
David, do you want to start first, or do you?
Oh God. Okay, so I have played 6 games with Pathfinders, and I have lost all 6 games.
Get out.
And it's
Just
not.
get out.
But it's not. No, I'm gonna caveat this. Okay, it's not the fault of the unit. It's actually not the Pathfinders that are causing the losses.
Did you
I think.
lose your first 6 games with Luke Skywalker?
I don't know. I don't think I did. I don't think I did. I'm like a baby. I don't have a memory of that time of my Legion life. or they're just so traumatic I've blocked them out.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Take your pick. Whatever storyline appeals to you the most. So I'm 06, and I wasn't too hot on Infiltrate, and I've used Infiltrate, and I'm sort of like, basically it's like, okay, I think this would be really good, and then my opponent sees that they're vulnerable, and then he puts the unit down there to fill the gap, and I'm like, oh drat, I should have infiltrated that turn.
Questions.
Or something like that.
Questions.
Yeah, of course.
First,
please.
Have you played the same configuration all 6 times? Okay.
No, I've been trying different ones.
What is the configuration you've tried the most?
Bistan Uplink.
Bistan Uplink. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How have you been, like, paint us a picture of exactly what happened in, like, the average game?
The general gist, the first couple times my opponent was very aware of their presence and made a point to just destroy them anytime you can see them.
I guess my question is, did they infiltrate at range, like just outside range 3? Did they recon intel into range or just outside range 4? And
so
then, like, recon intel.
Mainly it was just infiltrating. It was just infiltrating a little bit outside range 4 of my opponent just to get the range 4 shots going. And that might have been a reason I had an issue with them, is because that sort of necessitated them to be a little bit exposed.
Okay.
But I mean, it's tough because your opponent, sometimes the terrain doesn't give you what you need to make a good infiltrate play.
Totally.
And sometimes the deployment zone, like the way the battle cards work, it falls out. It's like, oh, I don't have a chance to make a good infiltrate play. You know, like what are you going to do with Peo against double Wookiees? Like you're not going to have a whole lot of play there infiltrating. You're just walking right into the Wookiees, or you know something like that. So I mean, I had some bad matchups. I had some mental errors, you know, but that's just me learning how to play the unit. I don't think it's you know symptomatic that the unit is bad. Somehow, I think the unit's fine. Maybe they just don't jive with me. You know, maybe I'm just not a Pathfinder player. Who knows?
Fair.
That's where I'm at.
What do you think?
They definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think they are definitely a playstyle thing. Like they have to fit your playstyle. They're a niche unit for sure. So I have played 6 games with them. I'm 3-3 in said games. So the first 2 games I was running jank basically. I was running some version of spicy chicken combo, and I was kind of trying to just like, you know, fit a square peg into a round hole by putting the Pathfinders in that list, and it was just like jank squared. You know, it was a janky list with additional jank, and it was just not good.
Sure.
So those 2 games actually were against LJ, and in both games he just like roasted my Pathfinders.
Jankception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my last 4 games, I just slotted them into my normal Wonder Twins list with instead of Wookiees. So that would be Luke, Leia, 4 Z6s, fleets, 2 snipers, and then the Pathfinders. And the build that I've been using in that for the Pathfinders is POW, uplink, duck and cover, reconfigure, and recon intel. And that adds up to 116 points. So that's 2 more points than tricked out Wookiee squad. And those 4 games I've actually done, even though, so I went 3-1 in those 4 games. The one I lost had nothing to do with the Pathfinders. I actually was a little bit of a victim of my success with the Pathfinders, and I got reckless with Luke, and that's why I lost. So the first 2 games I played at Huzzah, and this is super rare for me to get 4 games in a week, so I'm super grateful for that. But I got 2 games in at Huzzah. The first was against a guy named Chris, super nice guy. He was also kind of new to Legion, and he did not have his soft infiltrate counters built into his list. So we talked last week about like you need. It's not a very high bar. Like it could be as simple as buying recon intel on a snowtrooper unit or on Luke or on a Wookiee unit, you know, for 2 points and calling it a day. But you need to at least have some kind of, even if it's a cheap answer, you need to have some kind of answer to infiltrate. And he hadn't, you know, like I said, he was newer, so he hadn't built that into his list. So I actually, Recover was in the 3rd slot, and I'm like, well, I have to see if this works. Sorry, dude. So I forced Recover, and it worked. I dropped the Pathfinders on the box. They ran away with the box, and that was pretty much it. So, you know, it was like the dream scenario for Pathfinders, and you definitely cannot count on that happening most of the time.
Oh yeah, can I mention that all 6 of these losses with Pathfinders, not once was I able to force Recover?
Yeah, I mean,
it just never happened for me.
I do think, generally speaking, Recover is a little bit of a trap. Like, you really have to look at your opponent's list and be like, okay, you know, do they have recon intel? Do they have Given to Your Anger? Do they have Boba Fett? The answer to one of those questions is probably yes, and if the answer is yes, then you don't want to try a box grab. But if it's not yes, then you can try a box grab, and at least when I did it, it worked. So that was good. They did exactly what they're, you know, advertised. Second game was against the illustrious Matt Dunn, and he was also running Pathfinders. He was running Jin and Pathfinders. It was a really bizarre game. It was on one of his awesome city tables, which was fairly dense, and we played Disarray. So
it's like really, paradise.
Yeah, it was. So Disarray is great for Pathfinders, just in general, which I'll get to in game number 3. But essentially, I was able to set up my Pathfinders in, like, he had some Rebel troopers in one of his other deployment zones, and I just set the Pathfinders up like at a cross angle, so the Rebel troopers were out of cover. And I killed 4 Rebel troopers on the first turn with 1 volley. So
were you also running Bistan, or were you running POW?
Oh no, this was the same thing. So POW, all 4 of these games was the same. POW, duck and cover, link, etc.
With uplink, yeah.
So yeah, essentially what you do if you're going for like an alpha strike with Pathfinders is I run Leia, so I play coordinated bombardment, and then I uplink the paths so that they and Leia both have orders, and then you can immediately activate the Pathfinders. So that worked out pretty well. I ended up winning that game kind of by the skin of my teeth. I also made a reckless Luke play in this game. I put him. It was one of those like Imperial terrain walls, which is just short enough such that Luke's lightsaber sticks up over the top of it. So I was running Luke along the other side from his army of that wall, and of course I didn't, rookie mistake. I didn't actually like get down at surface level and look, and of course his lightsaber was sticking up over the top of it, so he lit up Luke from the other side of that wall. And Luke survived with like 1 health to subsequently kill an RT and Jin. So
Nice.
that was definitely a skin of my teeth situation. But the Pathfinders did well on that one. They had their good alpha strike. So, and then my last 2 games were on Saturday against Comrade Artydum from the Discord. The first game I forced Disarray against Palpatine. He was playing Palp. And basically the short version is I killed 5 sniper minis on the first turn.
Jeez.
Excellent.
Disarray is really good for Pathfinders.
So can you qualify that with how the snipers died?
What happened? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I want to know.
So he put one of his snipers in his far deployment. So obviously Disarray is a bad setup in general for Palpatine because you only have the one commander, and generally speaking, you want as much stuff near Palpatine as possible.
Not to mention he's so far away from everything and slow as balls.
Right. So we ended up on Vaporators. He put 2 of his Vaps near one of his deployment zones. So I kind of figured that's where he was going to drop most of his stuff. So I put one of my Vaps like in the far deployment zone, and then another one kind of in the middle. And he dropped most of his stuff near Palpatine in that one deployment zone, and then he had to put something in that other one. So he put, a sniper strike team over on that side, what he thought was out of line of sight. So I dropped my Pathfinders last, and I dropped them basically right next to that sniper strike team, and they just ate him. If you use recon intel with him, obviously you're restricted from dropping range 3 away from something. But if you're using recon intel, you can drop them, and then you can do your recon intel move such that you're within range 3 of your target after you drop them. So, you have to be careful when you do that you're not gonna, your Pathfinders aren't gonna get like subsequently killed by something else immediately, which is very possible if you're not going after an isolated target. But in this case, they were able to go after an isolated target. So then I also got like since it's Disarray, I put Leia kind of in the other deployment zone at a cross angle to his forces, and I was able to take out another sniper unit with coordinated bombardment. And it was just the one model, at least with coordinated bombardment. And then the last one was actually a double jump with Luke, and I force pulled them out into the open around a corner, and then some rebel troopers took them out. So
nice.
So yeah, I killed. So that game kind of snowballed from there. The second game, also against Comrade Artydum, he was playing as Veers Welberless, so he was for serious this time. And the same thing happened. I killed 5 sniper minis on the first turn, and this was a totally different setup. Essentially, he had 3 sniper teams, and he set them up such that, as most people do, with like 1 mini in, behind cover corner peeking, right? Such that Leia could only get a shot on one of the minis for each sniper team. But I then did like a cross angle with the Pathfinders such that they could see the other mini from the sniper teams. So I did the same thing with uplink and actually split fire with the Pathfinders to take out 2 sniper minis, the ones that Leia couldn't see, and then Leia did coordinated bombardment and she took out the other 2. So
coordinated bombardment wasn't good enough.
I know, right? Now, I should caveat that they did then get Bubba rocketed, and 4 of the models died, although Pao himself survived rather late into the game.
Right, so they traded in that instance.
They traded, yeah. No, I still lost that game because Comrade, picked himself up from that first turn bombard and played a very solid game. And I was kind of reckless with Luke, and Luke got whipcorded and then cut down in the open. And that was pretty much it. So I ultimately lost that game. So good comeback, Comrade. But as far as the Pathfinders are concerned, it definitely wasn't their fault that I lost that game. I think they did their job. So those are all kind of splashy examples of Pathfinder use, but I also think that they're very good. Like if your opponent doesn't, give you any openings like that, I think they can also be good just running as like a super rebel trooper squad.
Did either of you guys run Pathfinders alongside Chewie?
I did not.
I did not, but I played against someone who did, and it was Chewie alongside Bistan, and that seemed like a really good way to play them. Just Bistan long range config, camp in the back, and if they ever get targeted, Chewie just pulls hits off them. Like, don't even bother with infiltrate when you run it like that. It's just like the most budget Bistan build you can make, which is I think like 116 or 106 points, because it doesn't even take an uplink or anything like that. Doesn't even use infiltrate. It's literally just for the exhaust weapon and the range 4. And I mean that style I think only works when you actually roll well, because I think the average hits is pretty low. So you're basically just relying on the 6 shots that unit gets over the course of the game. You're relying on at least one of those shots being really good. And for my opponent, he had 2 of those shots. And the kid had 1 shot from range 4, which was 8 hits, and then another shot, which was 6 hits off of Bistan. And that was he was just like blowing up trooper squads right and left. And I couldn't ultimately hold out against that kind of firepower, because he was doing the thing where he was doing like a Rebel Elites kind of list, like a low activation, but it was like Han, Chewie, Bistan, 2 Wookiees, and some other things. And it was an interesting list. I eventually lost because my dice just wouldn't cooperate. My decisions weren't terrible. I just couldn't damage anything. I had like 3 Rebel Trooper squads in a row roll 0 hits. Feels bad, man.
You couldn't repel firepower of that magnitude?
I could not repel firepower or melee of that magnitude because I was running PAO or POW. Sorry, gosh, I did it again. PAO. Every time I do it, take a drink. Anyway, yeah. So I just don't think that your standard Wonder Twins repels double Wookiees with the kind of wound shunting that Reckless Diversion and Chewbacca can make, especially if they're rolling crazy hot on top of everything. But yeah, it was good. He got everything he wanted to deploying wise. It was like battle lines intercept. It was kind of terrible.
Yeah, I could see that working. I haven't tried Bistan myself, just because I sort of on principle like hate recover weapons. And I think if we're going to take a firepower unit like that, especially alongside 2E, I'd probably just rather take Commandos. But obviously, Pathfinders have that range 4, which is nice. So I don't know.
For sure.
It'd be interesting to try.
I sort of feel the opposite on that. No, I don't play Rebels, but I feel like the Pathfinders just pack so much more firepower, even through cover.
They don't I guess if you're taking the budget Bistan build, it's what, 100 points, 106 points.
Yeah, 106 with
config. Don't get me wrong, it's certainly more expensive than Commandos in that regard. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean Commandos are 88, so it's only 14 more points.
I think I would prefer to have the range 4 option though,
And by 14 I mean 18.
Yeah. Well, the big trouble in that game specifically was that the melee units just got in right away, and I had nothing that could really handle it other than Luke. And that's just my own list construction issues. But a lot of people don't run melee skew. It's definitely not something you see very often.
Yeah, I'm still not sold on taking them over Wookiees in that same slot. Wookiees are, they're 2 completely different tools, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, you've already got good shooting, even without Pathfinders, you still have really good shooting between snipers, 4Z6s, and fleets. So I think the best argument for Wookiees is you have a second melee
Yeah, they
threat.
fill a role that you don't really have outside Luke. That's
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Yep.
They do
And I think
do pretty much any decent shooting though.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
you have
I'm not
issue pitching in the
recommending
open.
one over the other either. Like, but again, it's worth for the audience to hear that we're at least not sold on is one better than the other. You know, we're not sold yet on whether to take one or the other depending on what we're facing. I mean, obviously, if things shifted and things that were very good against Wookiees, became very common, that is like armor, which it might after after the occupier comes out. When we might shift, we'd have a different perspective on the issue. But for right now, because troopers are it kind of, Wookiees seem to be a really good idea.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to end up there still eventually, but I do need to get the Pathfinders out of my system and get a good feel for them. So
yeah, same here. And I mean, if nothing else, you're learning how they play, and so if you ever face them, you're like, well, I know what they can do. I know what they can't do. More specifically,
yeah,
I know what they can't do. I don't know how to bury them, basically.
Yeah, so I guess early returns are mixed is the short version of all that.
Yeah, that's the too long didn't rebel version.
Have fun with your infiltrate toys, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose.
Mine aren't coming until my Death Troopers show up, so they're all pre-ordered together.
Oh, your Pathfinders are pre-ordered with your yeah.
I'm not going to play them for any time in the foreseeable future, so it was kind of like whatever. I got free shipping out of the deal, so
there you go. Do you guys want to quickly hit battle cards from LVO?
Yeah, let's talk about these battle cards real quick as our last little segment here before we sign off.
And this can be super fast because we could spend like a whole episode, and maybe we should, on turn 0 generally, and on which cards you should cut from your deck. But you can find the data that we're going to talk about. You can find on Never Tell Me the Odds, which is swlegionodds.com. LVO data article part 1. It's got essentially a breakdown of a lot of different things, but including what we're about to talk about, which is which battle cards, which objective, deployment, and condition were played, and then how often they were cut, and by which faction. So if you want to see like all the nitty gritty, you can check out that article. So the least popular objective was Breakthrough. Only played 16 times. I feel like people are uncomfortable with that objective.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I love actually.
Breakthrough.
Well, so
yeah,
I have a lot to say about this. Not a lot, but enough. So it was pretty clear. So for instance, in my first game at LVO, Breakthrough was in the 3rd spot. My opponent banned the thing in the 1st spot, and it was whatever he banned, which I think it might have been Recover, Intercept, and then Breakthrough. It was clear that our game was not going to go to turn 5 probably, which I think makes Breakthrough a lot worse.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's essentially like if one person can get 1 unit into the deployment zone on turn 4, then that's usually a win for them, basically.
Yeah. So I think that specifically in a low time frame tournament format like LVO was, the Breakthrough numbers might be skewed more than they normally would be.
Yep, that's a very good point.
Not to take away from the data, but like
no, I agree, and that's a caveat for all this, right? Is this is specific to LVO and the conditions at LVO? So
yeah.
Key Positions was the most popularly played objective by a fairly wide margin. It's played 37 times. It's kind of interesting. I guess it's now it's the least objectionable objective.
It's a pretty fair.
That's kind of how I read that.
Pretty fair now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also not what do you say? It's not time sensitive like Intercept is. So you have the full game length to get the objective done. You don't have to be in a place by a certain round.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice if you like laying back a little bit. That's actually a pretty good one for you.
I also tracked Empire and Rebel wins in cross-faction matchups, so non-mirror matches for each of these. And they were pretty, so small sample size caveat totally applies here. They were pretty even, mostly. Recover was 2-1 in favor of Empire, which actually doesn't surprise me because Boba Fett.
Gee, I wonder who makes that possible. A certain Mandalorian.
Okay.
But other than that one, they were all pretty even. Actually, Breakthrough was similar, although that was only a 5-game sample. So 1 Rebel win, 4 Empire wins on Breakthrough in cross-faction matchups. So probably for the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, Boba's also very excellent if you have enough time to get him over there.
Yep. Deployments. Most popular deployment was Major Offensive, which incidentally also nobody cut from their deck. Not a single person. So I guess that's the that's the everyman deployment, and nobody hates Major Offensive.
Yeah, I mean it's the diagonal deployment essentially. Yep. It's Legion's equivalent of a diagonal deployment. Right.
Yeah. The least popular deployment by a long shot was Disarray, which was only played 1 time in the entirety of LVO. That's 125 games. Disarray was played 1 time.
So I would like to caveat this once again in that I think that people are less apt to play Disarray on tournament-esque tables that you can't get around the sides of.
That's definitely true. I mean, the question is...
Yeah, go for it.
No, that's definitely true from a convenience perspective. But if you're in an important tournament and your army favors Disarray, personally, I think you should be willing to walk around the table if you have to do that setup.
No doubt. So for instance, yeah, you're totally right. It's just like, again, we're talking about a time sensitive format where if you have to walk around the table every single time you want to check line of sight or move model, that's a significant attack on.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think too, people are generally uncomfortable with Disarray.
Oh, for sure. It's
also, we'll get to it later, but it was also the most cut objective by Empire players, because Empire players are typically just running 1 commander. In fact, almost every single Empire list just had 1 commander. So unless it was in the force, the last slot, and it was forced by a Rebel player in a cross-faction matchup, it probably didn't get played for that reason also.
Empire wins 0. It just feels so good looking at that statistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 1 game, but...
I know, but still just warms my heart.
Yep.
Anyway.
So Disarray is one of those things, I feel like we just talked about. I feel like it favors Pathfinders.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it favors dual commander lists in general, which means, generally speaking, it's going to be favoring Rebels. I think if you're a Rebel player, you should have Disarray in your deck, and you should practice on Disarray.
Can I just say that it's actually not bad for Boba Veers, especially if you have Boba Veers with numerous officers. It's not so bad. You know, just one side of the board becomes the 2 courage club. You know what I mean? And then the other side is Veers and whatever isn't 2 courage, generally speaking.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, you have some order handing out issues potentially still, because Boba can only give orders to himself, and essentially you can't give orders to one side of the table.
Yeah, so you just rely on improv to muddle through.
Right.
In that case.
But Veers Boba is definitely, if you have the right build, more capable on Disarray than other Empire lists. And actually, Garn, Notorious, Veers Boba player from Invader League, he loves Disarray.
Oh yeah.
He also plays what is it? The leaders in DLT squads, which makes it a lot better.
Yeah,
right,
officer DLTs.
Yep.
Also, Nikki Myland, a speeder bike player from Invader League and from the Team League. He shelved his bikes for the last round of Team League, but he's a huge fan of Disarray as well.
Yep, Disarray is good with bikes. So, although bikes are not really a thing right now, but
get your long range comm links out, because that's what you want. It's good.
Yep. So just going back, there was only one Empire list that had 2 commanders in it.
Wow.
Out of 34. So
was it a? I mean,
it was an officer, wasn't it?
It was Vader and a generic officer. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, what are you going to take if you're taking 2 commanders with Empire? Like
Palpatine, Vader. Someone had to say it.
A Veer's generic officer list.
Yeah, I could see that.
I actually played against a Palt Boba that was competent the other day. It was
Palt
really
Boba
fun.
Was a lot better than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Oh yeah.
I agree.
Boba pull the strings is dope.
It is. It's good.
Especially on the flamer turn. Double move, pull the strings. Whoosh, just murder something.
All right. So conditions, most popular was clear conditions. I think this is the same takeaway as major offensive, least objectionable. I don't know if there's much to take away from the conditions. There's not a huge Empire Rebel skew in any of these.
No, and I mean, even the least played condition, I don't know, hostile environment, minefield, that's normal. I mean, nothing seems like it's crazy weird here.
Yep, I agree. All right, so let's talk about cut cards real quick. So the most people cut Sabotage. 29 players cut Sabotage.
I gotta say, and I think I talked to you about this on the plane back, I think that is objectively wrong. I know people hate the subjective, but I don't understand why people are
It's
cutting
really
it.
good.
It's
I don't understand.
It's really good for blue player.
Yeah,
which means that you should always have it, because if you're using your deck, then you're blue player.
It's like you just have the advantage. You get to sit back on it. I don't understand why anybody is cutting Sabotage, and maybe some wizard out there will enlighten me, but thus far no one has given me a good argument as to why you should cut Sabotage out of your deck.
Yeah, it's a little these stats are the most perplexing to me. So because the most cut one was Sabotage, which, as you said, I don't think anybody should be cutting. The second most one cut was Breakthrough, which I think favors a lot of lists that people like. It favors Boba Fett, it favors Luke. So I don't really get that one either.
Also favors blue, just in the sense that you don't have to attack if you don't want to.
I went into this tournament and I would have assumed that the 2 cards that should have been cut the most were Recover and Intercept the Transmissions, hands down.
Yep. I cut Intercept.
And those were, I cut Recover personally.
If you're playing Rebels, you probably ban Recover because you don't have Boba. If you're playing Empire, you're probably banning Intercept unless you're playing Vader Palp. But I don't know.
Yeah. And so actually, that was the one other, Intercept was the other objective that had a little bit of a skew in cross-faction matchups. It was 2-1 Rebels. So, I think generally speaking, those are good guidelines. Rebels cut Recover, Imperials cut Intercept, unless you're playing Palp and Vader.
Clearly, the cut Recover caveat, if you're playing Pathfinders or Jin, might not be totally relevant anymore.
Applicable anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it may not be applicable at all.
Yeah, I think the new guidance there is unless you have Boba Fett or an infiltrate unit, you cut Recover. So that was kind of interesting. As far as deployment, Disarray was most cut. And this is the
Empire
biggest,
cut 20. I love it.
Yeah, so this is the largest, by far, the largest faction split as far as cut is concerned. Rebels cut Disarray 4 times. Empire players cut Disarray 20 times.
I mean, it's so much better for you when you have 2 commanders and your opponent has 1. It's just
absolutely.
That's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think too, I talked about this with Comrade on Saturday. I think if you're running Palpatine, the conventional wisdom is Long March is bad for Palpatine and Vader. First of all, I don't think that's true. But second of all, I think Disarray is much worse. So I think you, generally speaking, if you're an Empire player, you want to cut disarray, even if you think Long March is bad because you have a slow commander.
Yeah, and also like what happens if you stack one deployment zone, you end up surrounded. You have almost no presence in the middle of the board at all.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened in our first game. Is like normally with disarray, you can potentially get 2 angles on your opponent. If you have 2 commanders, with Pathfinders, you can get 3. So yeah. Major offensive was cut 0 times. It was nobody cut major offensive. So I thought that was kind of funny.
I played major offensive like 3 out of 4 games.
Yeah, it's like the quote standard, least objectionable deployment. So
I think out of my 5, I played it twice. Yeah, twice, and then the others were all Long March because I like to Long March as rebels because I was running Trip Snipers. So yeah.
For conditions, limited viz was cut the most, 24 times. Not surprising.
Nope.
Maximum firepower, snipers, coordinated bombardment, all have limited viz. So that's sort of another like interesting, like if you're playing either Veers Bobo snipers or Wonder Twins snipers, you probably hate limited viz, and that's probably the only card you really like have strong feelings about. So if you're up against another Wonder Twins player or another Veers Boba player, and you want to like roll the dice and pick, you don't care about table side, you want to roll the dice and pick red player for yourself, like if you have the bid, there's a good chance that your opponent cut the same cards that you did.
Who's that rebel hero that cut clear conditions?
It was probably Lupo. Let me check.
Yeah, maybe.
That says like spicy chicken combo or something to me, right? I don't know what list it was, but like I think you got to be doing something janky
I'm gonna
like
look.
that to clear conditions.
Yeah,
honestly, I don't think clear conditions should be a card.
It was Andrew Myers.
Okay.
And he was running flyboys with Wookiees. So
there you go. Yep. That's all good for him.
No snipers. Yep.
No snipers. Yeah, all good for him. He doesn't care about clear.
That's a good call. Yep.
Yep.
It's just so uninteresting. I hate clear conditions.
It is boring.
Yeah, it's just like a blank card.
I wish I could cut it.
You know what I mean?
I don't like playing it.
I mean, sometimes you have the luxury of fighting on a sunny day,
And guess what, rebels? That means you're doing it wrong.
There you go.
I don't know. I think limited viz.
No. Sorry, I meant from like a thematic perspective.
Yeah.
If you're rebels,
thematically,
play a sunny day, you probably do it wrong.
It's like over here, shoot us, please.
Even like the one time you see what would be functionally a coordinated bombardment, which I think the closest thing that comes to in an actual movie is like the X-wing strike from Rogue One. It's like rainy and stormy,
It's like, yeah.
Clearly limited visibility.
Yeah.
You just don't do that.
All right. Yeah. I guess they did kill a friendly in that one, so maybe it should not have been. Anyway, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Whoops. Swear to God, if you play this game, and
you guys got anything else on these? Yeah.
I don't know. Go watch it.
Obligatory.
Just watch it again because it's a great movie.
I watch the Darth Vader hallway scene at least once a week. It's on YouTube, clipped.
It's got to nourish your dark side meditation. There you go.
All right, you guys got anything else on these?
No, I'm ready to go.
All right,
we good?
Cool. Well, next week, I'm not sure what we'll talk about.
I imagine.
I'm sure we'll have
to talk about.
There you go. Yeah, we'll have some
fingers crossed.
Spicy zoom enhance reveals from tomorrow.
Yes.
I think it's going to be really funny if like one of those units that has a bunch of unrevealed upgrade cards just dies on the first turn and they don't get to use it.
Well, so
it's like X34 where we don't know what any of the hardpoint or passenger upgrades are. But just rolls out there and then gets pasted.
I'm hoping they do it like the Destiny stream and like they've got like this card, like a camera specifically for the new cards. And
That'd be cool.
We'll see, clearly, but
Yep.
that would be nice.
I just think it would be really funny if, they don't do something like that and like we don't get to see. I'm sure they would, because they're cool dudes. I'm sure they would. Like
if the land speeder gets blown up turn 1, we should do a giveaway. That'd be funny.
Free land speeder.
Yeah.
Should we just start a bunch of pools on what's going to happen in this game?
Definitely. Well, we don't know the scenario or anything.
No,
it's except that it's 3x3.
Yeah, I mean it's 3x3, so everything can shoot everything at all game.
I'm hoping to see some kind of like Skywalker lightsaber delivery system going on.
Yeah, same here. FedEx for light side of the Force.
Any 100-point game, I assume.
On a 3, I certainly hope not
on a 3x3. No, it's got to be a 500.
Have to be.
Well, you know what I mean.
I mean,
yeah, I mean you could fit 800 points on a 3x3
if they're taking heavies, like the tanks, at least. How much is it?
I don't know.
Big,
it's big.
I mean,
it's big.
Like a lot of the cost of an ATSD. Like 500 points is going to be really limiting. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true. Well, we'll see what they have in store for us.
I guess we'll see. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
So by the time you're listening to this, it could be like going on now.
Could be over.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, and one last thing. If you haven't played Legion on a 3x3 or done any of those operations, I highly recommend you try it. It's actually really compressible, and some of my locals find that more fun than standard. So feel free to try that out with low force count and just play, man. Just play. It's really fun. Like it's called a raid, I think, when you play on a 3x3 with lower point count. So yeah, give it a shot. It's fun.
Darth Vader's got to be so much better.
All right. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and Luke. I mean, Luke gets the things faster too.
Luke doesn't need to be better,
That's true. Yeah. It definitely helps Vader when you're playing on half the table. All right. Well, so next week we will talk about some of that, no doubt. And everybody have a good week of some awesome Legion action. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
And I'm David.
And we're the Notorious Scoundrels. Peace out.
Join us next time for another edition of the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. This has been a 5th Trooper production.